Hello everyone. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to the interview series of Mentor My Board, that is Boardroom Talks. First, let me welcome you all to this on Wednesday afternoon for the special Boardroom Talk straight from Netherlands. Yes, you heard it right, Netherlands. And let me thank you for being such a wonderful audience and response to this talk series, which is inspiring and motivating us to come out with more and more board talks as the part of knowledge sharing with you all. Boardroom is a place where fortunes of great companies are written, and hence in pursuit of bringing the best practices of boardrooms and best practices followed by eminent directors, independent directors, women directors, professionals like CEOs, CFOs, company secretaries of corporate India and international boardrooms to you. We have come out with the interview series with directors, professionals, business leaders who have been guiding and acting as the torch bearers for the corporates and the boardrooms. Let me now introduce Mentor My Board to you. Mentor My Board is a platform where corporate directors come together to learn, to network, to sharpen their skills and get opportunity of serving on the companies to act as directors, independent directors, and also get mentored with our expert mentors on the panel on the areas of business, governance, finance, marketing, strategy. We are on a mission to transform Indian corporate directors and boardrooms and create a community of 1 lakh directors by 2027, that's virtual community. We help directors who are continuously looking to sharpen their boardroom skills and leadership skills, upgrade their knowledge on better governance through best board practices, which helps companies they serve on to grow faster and ethically. Now, kindly do share, like, subscribe to our Facebook page, Mentor My Board, our YouTube channel, Mentor My Board, and also join our LinkedIn community of Circle of Directors. So today, I, CS Divya Momay, founder of Mentor My Board, welcome CS Bharti Iyer, who is our eminent moderator for today, and for the talk with Geert Vermeulen from Netherlands. Let me introduce Bharti to you first. Bharti Iyer is having 30 years of vast experience in governance, risk, compliance, professional, and she's a compliance professional in general insurance. She is fellow company secretary of Institute of Company Secretaries of India. She has been holding the positions as company secretary of National Insurance Company Limited, Universal Sompo General Insurance, Raheja QBE General Insurance, and now she heads GRC in Jardine Lloyd and Thompson Multinational Insurance Booking Company, recently acquired by globally by Marsh and McLennan. So over to you, Bharti. Please introduce Geert and take the talk show ahead. You're on mute, Bharti.
Thank you so much, Divya. That's been a wonderful introduction. So pleased to welcome Geert Vermeulen. It's actually Janmashtami here, Geert, in the middle of the monsoons. So it's a double welcome to you on this very festive occasion of Krishna Jayanti, what we call Janmashtami. To the viewers, I would like to introduce Geert Vermeulen. He's a very eminent person who is who has also founded ECMC, the Ethics and Compliance Management and Consulting Company. Now, in his own words, his mission statement is to help organizations conduct business in an ethical and compliant way by reducing risk and stimulating better business. Geert is specializing in establishing and improving ethics and compliance programs in general and anti-corruption programs in particular. With regard to this further, I would like to mention that ECMC, the company which has been founded by Geert, provides compliance, training, consulting, interim ethics and compliance management programs, and he also speaks and writes on ethics and compliance. In fact, I read a wonderful article which has been reproduced by OECD in one of their reports in 2015, and we'll post a link to it in our LinkedIn talk series as well as in FB. So you can also, partake of this really insightful article. Geert has also obtained most of his experience in-house as the Chief Compliance Officer of Aon EMEA and the Global Head of Compliance of DAMCO, the freight forwarding arm of Maersk. He has been the president of the Dutch Compliance Officers Association, and he's also the founder chair of the expert group on financial economic crime of Crime Association, a member of the expert group on culture and behavior, and a member of the professional advisory committee of the law compliance minor at the Hague University. When he won the National Compliance Award in 2020, he was labeled as a compliance guru. So really a wonderful person to have here at this kickoff series. At this moment, Geert is launching his new company called the Integrity Coordinator. And with this company, he hopes to help organizations launch or improve whistleblowing and speaking up procedures. He also acts as the independent and external coordinator who handles whistleblowing reports. So I hope I've done justice to your wonderful profile, Geert. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. Geert, I know only because he's been a very vocal communicator on LinkedIn community, and because he's also on general insurance. So once again, Geert, thank you and very welcome here on this Boardroom Master Talk series. So yeah, thank you. So may I invite you to just give us a brief profile in your own words of your journey on the boards of various companies. What is your perspective regarding the directors and their and the general corporate governance perspective from your angle?
Yes, so I have a bit of board experience, but also a lot of experience as a compliance officer working with boards. And so at a given moment, I got curious after corporate governance codes. And the reason for that is as a chief compliance officer, I'm usually looking at trying to preserve the reputation and integrity of the company. And at a given moment, I started analyzing companies that went through a company scandal and see, okay, so where did this go wrong? And what I usually saw is that, usually there were three dominant factors why companies ended up in a company scandal. So this would be, for example, there would be a breakup in the controls. So the financial controls or the compliance controls. So that would be one reason, a problem with the controls. The second reason would be a problem with the company culture. And the third reason would be a problem with the corporate governance of the company. And what I've often seen is that out of these three factors, so controls, culture, governance, so usually it's at least two of them where there is a breakup, and very often also all three of them. So that got me thinking also about topics like corporate governance.
You put it very well, I must say. In your own experience, would you feel that corporate governance is a top-down approach? Or if for it to flow through the company, and because of that, the financial as well as the compliance control would be more effective?
Yeah, so indeed, so I do think that something like corporate governance is usually something that is imposed from top down. So that is, there are, so on the one hand, it's usually, the way I see it is that it's usually corporate governance is a system of checks and balances. And at a given moment, the company decides to adopt that certain system of checks and balances. Though there may also be restrictions coming out of the local law and out of corporate governance codes. Yeah. So I'm sorry. What was the other half of your question?
Sorry. Let me just come again, because you have answered most of it. Because I was just trying to establish whether, if the corporate governance controls are effective, would it flow down that the financial controls and the compliance controls would also be effective? Because from the board downwards.
Yeah, so I think it certainly helps. It certainly helps. And And so, like for example, if the corporate governance is working properly. So what I would expect, for example, is that there would, for example, be an independent internal audit function that checks whether everything is working properly and tries to detect anything that goes wrong. But there is also a strong role for compliance there, in my view. But well, of course, I'm a compliance professional, so. So what I have also seen many times is what would be a best practice if there is a compliance function and a chief compliance officer who has authority, who is well informed. And relatively independent. So preferably how I would put the compliance officer in the corporate governance structure is it is somebody who has what we sometimes call a seat on the table. So somebody who's close to the decision making, who is relatively independent. And then the question is, okay, so how do you ensure that the compliance officer is independent? Well, for example, by having him or her report to the C-suite, preferably the CEO, but could also be somebody else in the C-suite, with a separate reporting line to, well, I think within a one-tier company structure, I think that would probably be to the audit committee. In the Netherlands, we also have corporate governance structures with two-tier boards, where there is an executive board and a supervisory board. And in that case, what I usually see is that, or what I would consider to be a best practice, is that the compliance officer has a direct reporting relationship to somebody in the C-suite. So for example, the CEO, and a second reporting line to the supervisory board.
That's very well put. Because in India, we don't have that two-tier boards, but you have answered the question excellently well. So I just like to go back to your, the questions which we had prepared. And I just ask you briefly about your journey as a chief compliance officer. And, you have segued very correctly that the chief compliance officer should report to the C-suite and more importantly, have a seat at the table, which would direct the compliance controls within the country, within the company. But please just give us a brief description about your journey as a compliance officer.
My journey as a compliance officer, yes. Okay, so I think when I graduated from university, our profession didn't exist yet. So at a given moment in the course of my career, this was just something that came along. And I immediately bought into that. So I know that when I was young, I hated anything that was unfair. So I know when I went to study at a given moment, I thought, okay, so maybe I would become a journalist. To write about everything that was unfair in the world.
Very interesting.
The journalist told me, okay, so you better first learn a profession. So I decided to start studying economics. And I had this ambition to invent the economic model of Vermeulen that would solve all the poverty in the world. But, I'm never short of ambition. Within one or 1.5 years, I realized that the economists alone are not going to solve the poverty problem. So it's just too complex. Are too many other factors also at play. So at a given moment in my career, this opportunity came along to become a compliance officer, and I immediately grasped it because I realized that as a compliance officer, what we are trying to do is that we try to protect the reputation of a company. And by doing that, making sure that the company acts ethically and compliant. So what I was basically doing was trying to make sure that nothing unfair would happen. And I thought, oh, okay, so that is really what I wanted to do already when I was very young. So I really bought into that profession of being I would even say an ethics and compliance officer.
Very nice. So it's like in your DNA.
Yes.
No, but I must say your ambitions are really worthwhile ambitions. I'm pretty sure that at such a young age, nobody had such, noble intentions to do it. And I'm glad that you got into the compliance, because it's very hard to be passionate about compliance. And if you want to be a professional compliance officer throughout your life, so you have to really buy into the fact that you want to have the fair and ethical world. And that's how you happen to be passionate about compliance, which I am also. With regard to the second question, which I wanted to also talk to you about, is you have started this new company called Integrity Coordinator. So coming from, fair play, and your other question, other point which you mentioned, that you also had the intention at one point of being a journalist. So both going together, it leads us to whistleblowing, So would you like to expound a little bit about this, please?
Yes, so I think, well, like in many places in the world, what we have seen lately, that everybody is suffering from the COVID-19, the Corona crisis. So I started my company of ECMC, Ethics and Compliance Management and Consulting, 5 years ago. And I mainly act as a speaker, a teacher, and a consultant. But what I saw is that, with the COVID-19 crisis and the lockdown, many of the courses, the trainings, they were postponed or cancelled. So suddenly I was also in a situation where I had to think, okay, so maybe I have to change something in my business model. So I decided to do something totally different, something that I was planning to do already for quite a long time. And I thought, okay, so this is the moment. And the reason for that is that, so what we see currently with the COVID-19 crisis is that a lot of people are under pressure. So a lot of people are worried. So will I still have a job? Will I have something to eat tomorrow? Will my company still exist next month? So people have a lot of stress, and there is also a big disruption of business. So what we see is that the normal supply chain isn't working anymore. There are changes in the regular processes. Many people work from home. So what we also see is that the usual controls, they are not always working. And besides that, because people are under pressure, they start to do strange things. So when you are under pressure, sometimes you do things that you normally wouldn't do. And you can also rationalize them, like, okay, so I have to do this or that, because otherwise I won't survive, or otherwise my company won't survive. So if I look something that we call the fraud triangle, we see that all three elements of the fraud triangle at this moment are in place. So you have pressure, you have a lack of controls, and it's very easy to rationalize bad behavior. So considering that, if you think that already in a normal situation that most companies, they lose at least 5% of their revenue due to fraud. So if you are a big company, that would be a big money amount. And if you look at how the most instances of fraud are discovered, most of the instances of fraud are discovered through internal reports. So people who speak up, or people who blow the whistle. And if you look at, okay, so then who does that? Who blows the whistle? So then the large majority are actually the employees of the company. And at number 2, 3, it's the clients of the company and the suppliers of the company. And at number 4 are anonymous reports. So in that case, you don't know who made the report. And I know I've been coordinating as a compliance officer. I've been coordinating whistleblowing procedures for almost 12 years now. And I know this is a very strong tool first of all, to discover problems at an early stage when you can still easily do something about that. But secondly, also, it is a very strong tool to improve the culture of the company. So I thought, okay, so this is really, so with my new company, the Integrity Coordinator, and it's really, really new, so we don't have a website yet. So I just started the company, but I've registered it at the Chamber of Commerce. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be the external coordinator of whistleblowing procedures. So I'm going to help companies to roll out whistleblowing procedures and an investigation procedure. I'm going to be the independent external coordinator, receiving the reports, communicating with the reporters, and then also communicating with the company to see, okay, so this report came in. So what are we going to do about it? Are we going to, shall I coordinate the investigation? So that's the plan.
Oh, very good. And it's very unique. I must say, this is the first time I've heard of this. We do have a whistleblowing statute, and all companies have to have a whistleblowing committee, a standing committee. But generally, it is headed by the independent director, who's the chairman of the whistleblowing committee. So we don't have any external body to whom somebody can safely report. So like you said, that there are 4 points of the triangle right now during COVID situations, very much extent in India also. Pressure, rationalization, the chances of frauds happening, and then distance. Everybody is working from home. So controls are not as effective as they would be, because you would be there to see it. So it's a very, very unique company, and the objective of yours is really excellent. I don't know, I think we can pick up a few ideas from this and help our directors also to set up such things in their company, those who want to do this bold and very bold governance practice. Can we just segue on to what are your thoughts on corporate governance? What are the bold practices, best practices, which would be extent in other countries like US, Europe for a large extent, and then of course the Asian countries, because you've been to Bombay and must have dealt with Indian corporates also. So to a large extent, we want to know your thoughts on all the things. So that's a global perspective we are expecting from you.
Oh, okay. So I'll try to do my best. So if you consider that, if you think that, the aim of corporate governance is to ensure that there is a proper system of checks and balances within the company, because that in the end will also improve that will also create the most value in the long term. So I know there are different corporate governance models in the world, but what I've seen lately is that they are starting to grow towards each other. I am in the Netherlands, and in the Netherlands we have a 2-tier board. There are a few other countries where this is also customary. So we have usually a relatively small executive board with, let's say, 5-6 people. And then a non-executive board with also 4, 5, 6 people. So the non-executive board, we call that the supervisory board. And what they do is that they advise the executive board, but they are also the employer of the executive board. So they hire the executives. So that way you have some checks and balances there. So if you have, for example, if you have a very strong and dominant CEO, you would have, on the other hand, you would have the the non-executive committee, the supervisory committee, who has also a certain amount of power, and they can balance the power of the CEO. Now, as a result of company scandals, people have been looking also at supervisory boards and saying, okay, so traditionally this was something that people would do in one afternoon in the month. and they would tell the members of the non-executive committee, like, have you been paying sufficient attention? Were you on top of things? So what we see as a result is that the non-executives, they are getting more and more active. They spend more time on their role, and they are getting closer and closer to the executives. So sometimes they have their own office now in the company, and they start to walk around and they have discussions with the employees. So what we see is that this non-executive board membership that used to be something that you would do. Let's say if you would retire after you retired as CEO, so it would be more like something honorary to do for very.
It's no longer that.
It is becoming almost a full day job. So it's yeah. So I see also a couple of things changing with in the one-tier board. So in the one-tier boards where you have one board with executive directors and non-executive directors, you will see that people are looking at, okay, so how can we create more checks and balances within that one-tier board? So traditionally especially in the Anglo-Saxon world, you would see that, for example, that the function of chairman and CEO would often be combined. And this is becoming less and less fashionable. So people say, okay, so if we want to balance the powers, there should be a separate, for example, a non-executive chairman, a president and chairman, and an executive CEO. What we sometimes also see, and I understand there's a discussion about that in India, is that there are more and more people saying, well, if you have a one-tier board, then the non-executive members should be able to outvote the executive members. So you have better checks and balances. And I think if you look at all those developments, I think that the two models, they are growing towards each other.
With each other. Yeah, but just coming back to the questions which you said that, the non-executive board, the supervisory board appoints more or less most of the persons who are on the executive board. In India, it is actually the shareholders of the company and sometimes the promoters of the company who appoints, persons. And with regard to our various regulators, if you have an executive chairman on the board, then 50% of the board should comprise independent directors who have no pecuniary relationship. So this goes to, ensure that there is more active control by the non-executive and the, independent directors, totally independent directors. So in your experience, is this the common norm that, the supervisory board comprising the non-executive directors appoints the executive directors? And the other point which I want to ask you is the supervisory model and the executive board model, this two-tier model, is it mandatory under Dutch law, or it's something which the companies have grown into?
Yeah, so in the Netherlands, I think this model grew just naturally. So it just arose. But what we've seen in the last 20, 30 years, that as a result of company scandals, there have company codes, corporate governance codes have been put in place. And what we have seen in the Netherlands is that the corporate governance code that was usually agreed upon by the various parties, so employers, employer organizations, employee organizations, board member organizations. So there are a whole lot of organizations who have a discussion together, and then they come up with a corporate governance code. And what we have seen lately also is that the Dutch government would then say, well, this new corporate governance code, it really makes sense. And we're going to put that, and we're going to make it a law. So we're going to make it mandatory. That is, we're going to ask companies to comply. And if you don't comply with the corporate governance code, you have to explain why you think it is a good idea not to do so. So it's comply or explain.
Yeah, that's an excellent answer. So the other question I wanted to ask you is that for us, the shareholders of the company, they appoint the directors. So in Netherlands, how is it like the group gets together and appoint? I mean, who actually appoints the supervisory board and the executive?
Yeah, it's also the shareholders. Yeah.
All right, that's great.
So let's say that. But normally, let's say the supervisory board appoints the executives, But in the end, also the shareholders appoint the supervisory board. Yeah, I think that's how it works.
All right. Yeah. So, in your experience, how is this the norm to have a two-tier board in small corporates? Because India actually has about 500 or so large companies which figure in the 500 Fortune list of India. But by and large, we have small corporates and medium-sized corporates. So so the same in Netherlands is the case. And what is the two-tier model there, or is it just one?
So in the Netherlands, it's very common to have a two-tier board model, though it is possible to have a one-tier board model, but it's very unusual at this moment. Yeah.
No.
So,
how about small businesses? I wanted to ask you particularly about small corporates. How much of the total database would you say consists of very large corporates with a huge market cap, and from your perspective?
Yeah, so certainly compared to India, the Netherlands is only a very small country. So, so let's say, but we do have a couple big multinationals, though some of them are being split up at the moment, like Unilever and Shell. So there are discussions whether, so these are companies that have a head office both in the UK and in the Netherlands. And there are discussions going on moving their head office. So let's say we have something like, I don't know, 60, 70 really big companies from the Dutch perspective. And then we have also very many small companies. So also a lot of family-owned companies. And I think, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think you are on mute at the moment.
Yeah, just wanted to ask you, what has been your experience with regard to employees coming out and employees, suppliers, and buyers, stakeholders coming out with whistleblowing? Actually, what has been your experience? How often has it happened in your experience as a compliance officer and director?
Yes, that's a good question. A nice question to ask, especially from India. So what I have seen is that, so first of all, as I already touched upon that, I think that whistleblowing is a very important tool for the chief compliance officer and for the board to improve the culture of the company and to but also to make sure that you discover potential problems at an early stage. But then I also see there's how whistleblowing is perceived is very that really depends on the culture. So I have many ideas in my mind, and one of the ideas that is still in my back in my mind is that maybe I will one day I will write a PhD about that, because I notice there are very big differences around the world, the perception of whistleblowing. So, like for example, in a lot of Northwest Europe, but certainly also in the Netherlands, it's we do not. So there are some global numbers around this. So let's say the global average is that you should have something like I forgot the exact number, but it's something like 3 reports per, or I think 0.3 reports per 100 employees per year, something like that.
Oh my.
Yeah. So, but the global average doesn't say anything about what you would expect locally. So I know that in the Netherlands, I would hardly ever meet that global average. Because in the Netherlands, there's people don't like to blow the whistle. So this is something.
It's the same everywhere.
Indeed. Well, though there are differences. So let's say I noticed many times that for example, in the US, people are much more inclined to blow the whistle. And the highest numbers of whistleblowing reports traditionally would actually be from India. So, yes, and by far I would even say so. And I was thinking about like, okay, so why is that? So why is that? I think something that has one of the factors there, I think, is that if you take the relationship between, let's say, the average employee and the average manager in India. So managers are really high respected. And usually employees would not say to the manager like, I don't agree with you, or so they are less inclined to speak up. But on the other hand, I also experience people from India to be quite open. So when you have a one-on-one discussion with them, it looks to me like people would be more inclined to report something to in an anonymous system than to have a direct discussion with their boss about that. So I think and in the Netherlands it's almost the other way around. So there's a really small distance between the boss and the employee. And managers would say, "Oh, you can tell me anything. My door is always open." So in the Netherlands, we are known as being quite outspoken.
Right.
Some people would also call us rude because everything we think we just blur out, and we also do that towards our managers. So probably in the Netherlands there's a smaller need for whistleblowing systems because people are. Well, they just say it's not like that everywhere. So also in the Netherlands we have companies where there is management by fear, let's say. So that exists in the Netherlands as well. But generally speaking, I would say that an employee, and most employees in the Netherlands would not be afraid to speak up towards their boss. Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's good to know. And I'm astonished about this news coming about India because fear of reprisals is very, very high. So people don't like to, like you said, anonymously, yes, there would be. And that's what actually gives rise to the fact that we don't know whether he's a disgruntled employee who's whistleblowing or is there really fact in it? Because to a large extent, like you said, that people, if they're outspoken, then they are also tagged, So if it's even a supply chain person who's saying that, somebody's taking bribes, or if there is this thing who's asking that there is, a buyer who's saying that I'm expected to give a lot of kickbacks if I get this contract. So even those type of things, they will not come out and tell to the standing committee in the whistleblowers or to the audit committee, even unless pure anonymity is assured. And so that's the experience here, is what I have found. So I would like to know if there are one or two instances which you can just give a description about.
One of two instances of what?
Whistleblowing.
Yes. Yeah. So there are also so when a report is submitted as a coordinator, so what you do is you try to make a first assessment, which is very difficult usually. So you think, okay, so how bad is this, and what is the chance that this is right, or perhaps this is just some kind of loose allegation. And so what I usually do is that I investigate each and every case, also because in the past I have been wrong once in a while. So sometimes a report would come in and I would say, oh, this can't be true. No, I don't believe that this is happening. This just can't be true. And then we started to investigate it and it was true. And I've also experienced the other the other way around. So a report would come in and I would say, you see, I always expected something was wrong in that business unit. So let's go out and do a big investigation. And then we went out, did a big investigation, and it turned out that there was nothing going on. So
the journalist in you coming out.
So that first assessment is very important, but also very difficult to make. So let's say the first instance, I think you should be relatively neutral and think, okay, so it can be true, cannot be true. So let's do an investigation and let's think about, okay, so how are we going to do that investigation? And who should be involved in that and who should be informed about that, which is also, can also be pretty tricky sometimes. Yeah.
I agree, totally agree with you.
And yeah, if I may add something there, I'm sorry. So what we see on average, I think there's something like a global average that's something like 40% of the reports that come in are usually substantiated. So almost half of the reports are cases where you can actually find the evidence. So then there is also a lot of reports where you think, okay, so this in this case there was probably nothing going on, and there are also a number of cases where you think, I still don't know, but I cannot find the hard evidence. So in the end, if you're going to take action and disciplinary action, for example, you need to have good evidence. So you have to be able to prove your case.
Okay. Yeah. So just coming back to the other question, because I think I've spent a lot of your time on whistleblowing, because your integrity coordinator was intriguing me a lot. So I just wanted to ask you, like, from your perspective, from the Netherlands, and from your perspective, how do you find the compliance and the corporate governance practices in India? Is it matured? Is it still going on? Having a long ways to go with global perspective?
Yeah, good question. Also bearing in mind that it's been a couple of years since I've been in India, and I know that India is changing very rapidly. So I know I visited India 20 years ago just as a tourist, and I visited a couple times after that. I think the last time I visited India was something like 3 years ago. And every time I went to India, there was just the country had just changed dramatically. So India is developing at a breathtaking pace, I would say. So I think generally speaking, in my last experiences. So I have met some pretty good compliance officers from India. I used to have a pretty good compliance officer in India. So I think things are rapidly maturing. Yeah. So one thing though is that also in one of my last experiences. I know as a compliance officer, and I'm from the Netherlands, so as I said, so I can be really outspoken and maybe a little bit rude even. So at a given moment, I started challenging certain expenses of the CEO, and of the Indian CEO, and that didn't go down very well. So
I can imagine.
The fact that I usually act pretty independently as a compliance officer, and that I think in my role it is also important to challenge certain decisions that a board makes. That might be not that common yet in India, but who knows? This may also be changing fast.
May also be changing, yeah. As the companies grow, there are a number of joint ventures which encourage this. So from your point of view, I just wanted to ask you, because we are attracting a lot of foreign direct investment also. Risk management, how important is it for a director to be knowing about risk management, to understand the importance of risk management, and how does it help with regard to compliance controls implementation?
Yeah, so I think risk management is important. So it is important to do a good assessment of the risks, and also as a compliance officer, I also do a compliance risk assessment. So it's good to know. So where are your highest risks, and which ones should you address first? Because usually you have there's a limited budget, so you cannot do everything always. And you know, there's also a positive side to risk. So if you are an entrepreneur, you also consciously you take risks, but you take calculated risks. So risk is both something good and bad. I think risk management is important, but we also have to bear in mind that there are also, let's say, unknown risks. Like what we see at this moment with the COVID-19 crisis is that some companies did have that in their risk register. But very few companies, I think, realized the dramatic effects that this would have. But I also believe in the creativity of people. If you see how many, let's say, companies that work in offices, so I'm not talking about production companies, but office work, how fast people started to work from home.
Right.
That is just amazing. So if necessary, people are very creative.
Yeah, very naturally transitioned. Yes.
So people come up with creative solutions. Nevertheless, it's good to have some solid risk management. So also have a crisis plan and things like backups, IT.
Business continuity.
Yes.
Yes, I agree. So one of the questions we wanted to ask you is, representation of women on the boards of companies, both from your perspective in Netherlands, what you feel about it in India and the world over. Just give us your thoughts on women directors.
Yeah, so I think, there is some evidence also that supports that. I think good decision making within a board, it helps if there is a diverse board. So if you have a group of people in a board that are all alike, there's a risk of groupthink, and that nobody asks, let's say, some of the questions that should be asked.
No challenges.
Yes. So if you're thinking about diversity in boards, I think there should also be women on board. And by the way, you will also have women as clients and women as employees. So I think women should be in boards. But traditionally, most boards have been run by men. I would say that is. I see that almost everywhere in the world. And what I expected is that as we see more and more women also taking up higher education, so more and more women who study and who reach bachelor and master degrees, I would also expect that more and more women would end up in corporate boards. But somehow, well, certainly in Western Europe, this did not always. So I expected this would be a natural process, but it appeared it was not. So we can have a long discussions about the possible reasons for that. But I noticed at a given moment, so there's been a long discussion in Europe about quota for women on boards. And so at a given moment, I think Norway has implemented a quota of 40%. So there should at least be 40% women on boards of companies. So I think we're talking about listed companies now. You know, when that rule was there, they found women, and they found capable women. So, you know, that just demonstrates to me that it is possible. And maybe we just need a law to make sure that this happens. It's a bit of a disappointment for me, because I expected this would occur spontaneously. But if not, maybe we should have a law and a mandatory quota. Yeah.
Right. Like I said, the old boys network, no? I mean, it's still very prevalent.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, so people, if you are people in a board, they like to hire people who are just like them. So that is probably one. So you have the old boys network. So this little group of people who just give jobs to each other. And it's very difficult to get in between. So I also come. I'm not necessarily born, let's say, with a golden spoon in my mouth. So I was, of course, very lucky that I was born in the Netherlands, a relatively wealthy country. But let's say I was one of the first people in my family to have, actually the second person in my family to do higher education. So for me, it's also been a bit of a struggle to get my foot in the door.
Very nice. So as a person who has started up this company, and also as a sole company owner, what would you feel you would want from directors who are coming from outside on the board? And is there a person like, is there a concept like one person company in Netherlands? In India, under the New Companies Act, we have a one-person company. So a company with limited liability, one director and one person, it can be formed. So do you have that at your new venture which you're doing? And what is your experience with that?
Yes, so I have two companies now. So one of them is a one-person company, and the other one is a limited liability company. And so we're still small. So and I'm the single shareholder, so I can do whatever I want. But you know, what you see sometimes is when companies start growing, and maybe they need more capital. Maybe they need capital from venture capitalists, or maybe they need money from the bank. So then you will also see changes in the governance. So so you can also imagine that the banks would have would ask for some kind of some more checks and balances, and make sure that if, let's say, the owner of the company, if something would happen to him or her, that the company will still continue to exist. Yeah.
Yeah. So just to add a little flavor for the audience, just wanted to ask you about a few personal questions about your family, your work-life balance, your other pursuits, and how it helps you in your professional career.
Yeah. So I am married, and I have two daughters, Rianne and Helena. So at this moment they are 17 and 13 years old.
Wow.
You know, it's sometimes it is a bit of a struggle, because you as a person, you have just many roles. So you are so I've been an employee, I've been a manager, I've been a company owner, I am a father, but also I'm also a son. So my mother is still alive. So you have all these different roles. I think what is important is to stay close to yourself. But sometimes you also have to vary those roles. So, like, for example, I think my wife at a given moment said, like, I was looking at all the things that had to be done at home, and I was making a schedule and saying, okay, so you do this, you do that, you do that. And my wife was like, hey, you're not at work, so you cannot boss me around like you do with your employees. And I'm thinking, do I boss my employees around? Oh, okay. But that brings me also something I think that is quite important. So as I said, I also studied company scandals, and something that might be a big red flag also is that if you have for example, if you have a male CEO who at a given moment divorces from his first wife and then takes a second wife or a third wife, and perhaps that is maybe his secretary. So if you see something like that happening, it's usually a big red flag for a company scandal, because so when you are still with your, let's say, your childhood love and with your children in the home, children who at a given moment reach puberty, and they sometimes tell you like, okay, Dad, come on, just do normal. So it's let's say they keep you grounded. They keep you grounded. So I think that is important. And if you if you have a situation at home where also everybody looks up to you, so that can make people feel like they are really, really very special. So
they are special, highly special, and you're surrounded by women. So I can see where you would very much want to have women as directors of the board.
Thank you.
Is your wife also working? Good.
Yes, she does. Yes. So that is challenging sometimes. So we both work. So it's sometimes it's a bit of a struggle. So I know, for example, when I was doing a lot of traveling, also abroad, at a given moment, I spent 10 days in China, and I arrived back home, and my youngest daughter, who was still young then, she had put posters everywhere at home, like, Daddy, we miss you, and I was thinking, yeah, okay, so, here I am trying to fight unfair practices in China, and I'm forgetting about my home situation. So that also triggered me to travel less, and at a given moment to start working also for not for a multinational company, but for a couple of years I only worked for Dutch companies. So because I wanted to see my children grow up.
Yeah. Like you said, children keep you grounded.
Yes.
So just coming back to the director's point of view, I just want to ask on 2 or 3 things. One is the uniqueness of Mentor My Board, because we feel that Mentor My Board is in a very unique position of helping to mentor directors, aspiring as well as current directors. What is your take on that, and what can Mentor My Board do to help directors?
Yeah, so I think it is important for people that some give them that you receive some honest feedback, and it's something. If you are the manager of a company or a department, your employees may not always give you totally honest feedback, let's say, because they also want to get promoted or a salary raise. But I think if you get some good feedback as a person, I think that will help you grow in the end. So it's not always comfortable to hear that feedback in the beginning, but you got to realize, okay, so this is something that is going to make me better. So I've also had that experience something like 15 years ago when I was demoted. So I at a given moment, I was a department manager, and from a department manager, I became just an employee in the department. And I was really not happy with that. And my employer offered me a course about working more effectively. And I took that course, and we had a very, very intense week. And after that week, the trainer, she made me discover certain blocks I had. So she made me realize myself what was blocking me. and also what I could do to remove those blocks. So that was very important to me, and this is something I would never have been able to figure out. So yeah, I think it is important from time to time to get some real honest, sometimes brutal feedback.
Right.
And you have to organize that somewhere. So at this moment, I also have a couple of friends, and one of my friends is actually a coach, and I take her to dinner once in a while, and I discuss my challenges with her. But if you cannot, or if it's difficult for you to organize that in your personal life, yeah, definitely take a coach.
Yeah. So, in your opinion, what is the important thing, which three effective character traits or aptitudes which a director must have to be very effective as a director? And from that, I'll seg you back to the previous question: how will Mentor My Board help, in mentoring with regard to growing those three particular qualities or three primary traits which a director should possess to be very effective as a director?
Yeah, that's a good question. Difficult to answer. So so I think so. So I think what is firstly important is so one important trait of a good manager, director, is, I think, so it should always somebody who is smart, intelligent. But there are different types of smart. So, there are people who are very analytical, but there are also people who are very smart traders, like for example. So you have different types of being smart or intelligent. Yes. So I think that is important. But I think also directors should have a certain amount of emotional intelligence. And if you are just a very smart person, and you may at a given moment, you may also realize that you are not that emotionally intelligent, and then you can make sure that there is somebody who is emotionally intelligent on your board. Or again, so you should, I think, if you look at boards, I would say that I would be in favor of diverse boards with people from with different capabilities and from different backgrounds in that board. And what also helps there, if you don't have certain expertise, that you hire somebody from outside. So it's to obtain that expertise. So it's I think it's also good. So I think in the Netherlands we now have a rule that at least once a year you should evaluate yourselves as a board. So there's going to be, and usually those sessions are facilitated by somebody from outside. Right. So where you evaluate yourself as a board, like, okay, do we still have the right capabilities within our board? How are we doing? Are we communicating with each other? Right. And this is also something that is difficult to just do by yourself. So you can need some, it would be good to have some outside help there.
Right. Yeah. So I'd be happy to tell you that it's mandatory under law to have a board appraisal, all the committee appraisals, independent directors appraisal by the rest of the board, the CEO appraisal. So there's an interactive performance appraisal and open feedback along with succession planning. And Mentor My Board also perceives that this will be a very useful, part of the mentoring which we are offering. So thank you. That's a wonderful suggestion, and actually we are doing that. Again, further, I would just like to ask you, what do you think of the role of Mentor My Board in India? How do you envisage it going in the next 5 years? We are just taking off. I mean, just started. So, envisage the role in India, and how do you perceive it will take off?
Yeah, that's again, that's a good question. So yeah, first thing that comes in my mind is I think it would be good. So especially some of the higher ranking managers who don't get a lot of feedback from honest feedback from home or within that company, it would be good for them to hire somebody from the outside. But as I said, so it could also really be helpful to have somebody from the outside who looks at the board process. So how, as a board, how do we make decisions? How do we exchange views, and how are we happy with that, and can we do better from that perspective? And you know, sometimes it just takes somebody from the outside to give you that feedback. So I can imagine that there is a lot of potential for MentorMyBoard's.
Thank you. It's been really wonderful talking. What would you like to say? Anything about your perception of where India is going, what's happening, anything which comes to your mind? I will also invite Divya to join us. She has a couple of questions, I guess. So.
Absolutely wonderful interactions, which I have been, observing last 1 hour. And let me tell you, Geert, the perspective which you brought in, for India, and also the best practices which are being followed at Netherlands. This is really going to be, a way forward for India to look up to. And I'm really happy that, you have been following India, in terms of compliance and corporate governance, the wonderful interaction overall. So I think most of the questions Bharti has asked, and let me tell you, we look forward, for a continuous interaction with you over a period, and we would be happy to have your perspective and, the way best, especially 2-tier boards, that concept I've, really liked a lot, and I think India still has to pick up on that. So that's one area wherein we would, really need your guidance and support to set up those kind of cultures in India. So I look forward for wonderful, way ahead with you and in the journey of MentorMyBoard. So yes, over to you, Bharti, for the closing remarks.
Yeah. So Geert, thank you once again. It's really been a wonderful and very insightful discussion. I must say that there are a number of concepts, like Divya said, the 2-tier board, your activity with regard to the integrity coordinator, how passionate you are about ethics and compliance, the fact that what is your perspective on Indian boards, Indian directors, and more importantly, where you feel that MentorMyBoard is heading. So it's really been a wonderful interaction. You have any questions if you'd like to ask us, please?
Not questions at the moment, but I think so as I said previously, so over the last 12 years I've seen India changing rapidly, very rapidly, at an amazing pace. It's I like this new self-conscience of India. If you look at the statistics and you let's say you extrapolate like a straight line, you will see that it's not going to take long before India is going to be the biggest country in the world. So the economy is developing very fast. So I think India should really be it's going to be it already is, but it's going to be even a bigger power and a company to take into account. So
Absolutely well said, Geert. And I think, when we are heading towards, becoming a bigger platform for the world, it will become more important for the corporate directors of the Indian corporates to be more, high on ethics, high on compliance, and the, following the best practices, so that world looks up to us. I'm absolutely, in what you said. So thank you, Geert. Thank you, Bharti, for this wonderful interaction. And inviting Geert on this platform of MentorMyBoard. So let me also thank all our eminent audience here who has joined us. They usually join us every Friday, but today also we have so many people watching us live today. And please do like, comment, share the video as much as you can, so that more and more directors, aspiring directors, are benefited with this kind of knowledge sharing, such great insights from eminent directors, professionals, consultants, who have been working day in, day out for betterment of the corporate governance into various corporates. And do post, comment below. If you want to invite someone, on this talk show, we would be happy, and we will ensure that we have them in coming weeks. So stay tuned, keep watching, keep sharing, and keep motivating us. Once again, thank you, Geert, for this.
Thanks a lot, Geert.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay.
God bless.
Bye.
Stay safe. Stay safe.
Thank you.
It's been wonderful.